Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful and Minutia. If you are new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to kind of do, I guess, a themed video because Mother's Day is coming up. So I was just thinking about some of my favorite moms in literature, some of my favorite mothers that I have read about in books that have just inspired me or I just loved, and I wanted to make a video talking about that. Out of some of these books, I have packed some of them already, and some of them are not books that I own, so I won't be holding up the book, but I still thought it would be fun to talk about. So let's get started. So the first mother that I want to talk about is kind of a classic one that probably comes to several people's minds, and that is Ma Ingalls from the Little House on the Prairie series. I love Ma. Ma is just like, she is such a hard worker, but she's so kind and giving to her girls and really just instills in them a sense of kindness, a sense of morality, always, you know, standing up for people, doing what's right, and also instills like that good work ethic and not wasting things. I don't know, just like, I really like Ma in general. I just think that she's a very brave woman, and somehow she like put up with her husband like so often being like, let's pack up and go anywhere. I love that about her, that she just kind of like goes with the flow and she doesn't get mad at him. And then there are times when Charles Pa has to like go off and work for his family because the crops are failing, and she like holds down the fort. She is just like such a strong and amazing woman, and I really love Ma Ingalls. The next mom that I want to talk about is one that is probably a little less well known. And that mother is Victoria, or Vicky's mother, in Meet the Austins by Madeleine L'Engle. I love her. I love that book. I feel like when people think of Madeleine L'Engle, they think of A Wrinkle in Time. And those are really, that's a great series. But I had picked up the first book of like the Austen family. I don't know if it's called like the Austen Family Chronicles or whatever, but it's called Meet the Austins, and I read it last fall, and it is just such a sweet story about family, and I just love the family dynamic. The mom is just, she's just so kind and is willing to take in this orphaned girl, even though she has plenty of children of her own to keep her on her toes. And you know, then this orphan child is acting up and acting out throughout the book because of things that she is experiencing, and she handles that with like such wisdom and compassion, but at the same time she's very like firm. She doesn't just like let this kid get away with whatever. And I love the family dynamic in that book. Like, if you are just looking for just a feel-good story about a family, I really recommend Meet the Austins. The next mother that I would like to talk about is one that I feel like I mentioned this book quite a bit recently. I just read it in February, and that is Vianne from The Nightingale, and I just, that is like an emotionally intense book. I was sobbing at the end of it, and it's very difficult to read in places, but I love Vianne because when all these things are happening and the Germans are, you know, invading France and taking over, she doesn't lose hope or lose heart. She is less prone to just like take action when it comes to warring against the Germans. She doesn't tend to just want to be as outward with it, and the reason is because she has a young daughter who is about the same age as my daughter, which I think is why it hit me so hard. Like, she just kept believing that her husband would come home, and she kept trying to make the right decision for her daughter. And I don't know that I always would have made the same decisions that she made, but she just really cared about her daughter. She didn't make decisions out of selfishness, and I really loved that about her. So another World War II era type book that has another wonderful mother is The Mother in Between Shades of Grey. So this follows a family when the Russians are taking over the Baltic states, and they live in Lithuania, and their family is sent to the Russian Gulag in Siberia. And it is just, again, another emotionally intense book, but the mother in it is so brave and just loves her children and would do anything for her children. And I just, like, she's a very inspiring mother to me, even though she is definitely not the main character of the story. It focuses more on her daughter, who is the one also, you know, narrating it. But I just thought the mother's relationship with her children was really beautiful, and the sacrifices that she made for her children were just inspiring and beautiful. Another mother that I love is the Melody's mother from Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper, which actually I have right there. So Melody she is born and she is paralyzed and unable to speak. But her mother is such an advocate for her, because all of the doctors just assume that because Melody can't speak and can't really communicate, they think that in addition to her being paralyzed and unable to speak, that she is also mentally retarded. And her mother knows that she is not. She knows that she's not just brain dead, that she's in there. She advocates for her daughter and fights for her to find ways for her to communicate. And I just love both of the parents in Out of My Mind. Like that is, like, no parent wants to go through a situation where they have to watch their child suffer, and the way that Melody suffers in this book and the way that she's treated, like, no parent wants to watch that. And as a parent, the book really tugged at my heartstrings, but I hope that if I was ever put into that situation, that I would be as strong of an advocate for my child as Melody's mother was for her. Another really brave mom is Esperanza's mother in the book Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. So Esperanza's family is they live in Mexico, and they are very wealthy, and her father owns a lot of land, and things happen, and her mother have to flee from Mexico and illegally immigrate into the United States. And so Esperanza is basically just starting over. So she was just this wealthy child who had it all, and now she is completely impoverished in a work camp, and it is such an adjustment for her. So at times Esperanza kind of seems snobby and entitled, but it was such an adjustment for her to go from those two extremes. And her mother was brave enough to make the decision to flee, and her mother was so patient with Esperanza as she is making this adjustment, but also firm with her that, like, this is what we have to do. We have to, like, let's make the best of this. And I really just loved her mother. And I guess there's a theme here of strong mothers who do what's best for their children, even when it's really, really hard for them. Another mom that I really love she's really a side character, but that's Mrs. Darling in Peter Pan. And I can't tell you a lot about why I really love her without giving spoilers to the ending of Peter Pan, but if you have read the book, you probably can guess why I love her so much. Mrs. Darling just has such a big heart, and she's very compassionate and loving, and oh, I really love Mrs. Darling. So the next two mothers I'm going to mention are kind of like unconventional because they are not biological mothers. and one of them's not even a human. So the first one that I want to mention is Roz from The Wild Robot, and that probably seems weird if you haven't read this book, because Roz is a robot. So basically there's this ship that's transporting all these robots, and the ship crashes and Roz ends up on this island, and she learns to kind of like communicate with the animals and befriend the animals on the island. But she ends up with this little gosling because his parents are killed, and she ends up raising him as her own. And just like the relationship between Roz and this gosling is just, it's so sweet and just makes my heart so happy. So if you haven't read The Wild Robot and The Wild Robot Escapes, you should, because they are very wonderful, wonderful books. They're, I think maybe they're classified as middle grade books, but if they are, they're probably the lower end of middle grade, because there are a lot of illustrations, and it is just, they're just really sweet stories, and I really love them. And the last mother that I want to talk about is Marilla Cuthbert from Anne of Green Gables. So Marilla Cuthbert never intended to have Anne at all. You know, she's an old maid and she lives on this farm with her brother, and they want to adopt a boy to help them with some of the farm work because Matthew is getting older. And lo and behold, Matthew comes home with a girl because there has been a miscommunication, and Anne was definitely not what Matthew and Marilla were looking for. But I just love the relationship that develops between Marilla and Anne, and how much Marilla loves Anne, even though she is so gruff at times, and she's so practical. Like, she is a hard worker and she's so practical, and Anne is this fanciful girl with this huge imagination, and they couldn't be more opposite in personalities. But I just love how the love between them grows, and I don't know, I am really a sucker for found family stories, so I had to include that one in there, even though it's not your like traditional mother, but I love it. I think it's beautiful. So there are some of my favorite mothers in books that I have read. So tell me in the comments, who did I miss? Because I know that there are mothers out there that are iconic in literature that I forgot, I'm sure. I was like looking through my shelves, but I've already started packing my books, so I kind of like, I know I'm missing some. And I did not Google a list or anything. These are just like ones that were like off the top of my head that I thought of. So I would love to hear your input of mothers in literature that you absolutely love, that either tug at your heartstrings or that you, I don't know, kind of like want to emulate in your own parenting if you are a parent. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, and I would love it if you subscribe, so that way you can come back and chat with me some more about books. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.